Welcome back to The Thirst Winners, and we are going to be tackling Blade 2 this time. My name is Matt Waters. I'm joined by the founder of The Real World, IntoTheRealWorld.com, Mike Thomas. Mike, how are you this time around?
Dramatically different.
Dramatically different. A joke that will play for everyone that knows how we're recording these. Yeah, so it's Blade 2 time, which came up when we were talking about different films altogether, and you thought that it's possible that I thought this film was great, and that it bothered you that so many people thought it was. Would you care to expand upon that point?
Guillermo del Toro is like the most overrated director in the world. Like Pan's Labyrinth is a masterpiece. I literally just got out of The Shape of Water like 90 minutes ago, though. And he basically has not made a single other film besides Pan's Labyrinth that I really actively like. And I feel like he gets a lot of praise for his style. To me, he's like barely above like post-peak Tim Burton, where it's just like, I know exactly that I'm watching a Guillermo del Toro movie. I just don't know why anymore. And it's frustrating because I do think he's super creative, and I don't think he's truly like, you know, the last 15 years from Burton, where it's all like
the same.
Yeah, and it doesn't feel like being different for the sake of being different. Like, it feels like he's genuinely creative. I just think his stories don't hold together that well.
No.
I feel like it is definitely style over substance. And
he can create worlds, he can create weird, wonderful looking creatures, but in terms of threading the needle with an interesting narrative, I'm not sure it's there.
Yeah, and if you don't look for that is not as much a priority for you, which is, it's not for everybody. Like, some people are much more visual, definitely gravitate more towards visual filmmakers, then I would understand the appeal of them. But for me, it just doesn't quite work. It's not surprising to me that he's made the most boring Blade movie.
That is the way I would describe this one. Once upon a time, when I was super obsessed with Blade, I thought that Blade 2 was really good. And I watched it 2 days ago for this podcast, and I was very bored while watching it. It just has a soullessness to it. There's a lot of kind of heavy dead air, if that makes sense as a term. It just doesn't... There's just not as much of a punch as the first one, and it's not as fun as the third one, would be my takeaway. But, I mean, Blade 2, you pick up with... There's a new kind of vampire. They're called Reapers. They are crazy Guillermo del Toro looking monsters whose jaws open and sucker things come out, and the kind of leader of the vampire nation, Damaskinos. Yes. He basically goes to Blade with an offer: will you kill these for us? Because, I mean, they're going to kill a lot of humans, so you should help. And he is forced to team up with the Blood Pack, which is an elite team of vampires who were tasked with killing Blade. And you get this wonderful, in theory, partnership between people that hate each other as they try and hunt them down. Turns out Damaskinos genetically created the Reapers in his attempts to cure vampires of all their weaknesses, and Blade and the head of these evil ones, Jared Nomad. Yes, between them, they kill basically everyone in the film, and then Blade. It's just still Blade at the end. It's a lot less interesting than that may sound. I mean, straight away, I guess we got to get... Wesley Snipes is back as Blade. He is still very charismatic. He still sells these fight scenes pretty well. I think he feels a step slower than he did in the first one. And he
looks a little thicker to me.
Yes. I don't know if it's...
Not like fat, just like more muscle.
Yeah. And I feel there's almost more gunplay compared to martial arts compared to the first one. Not that that's necessarily a bad thing, but... feel there's less emphasis on the martial arts this time around, which, you know, I guess we did that, and this is the crazy monster movie romp that Del Toro has gone with. I don't know, he's just not quite as good, I don't think, Wesley Snipes this time around.
It's my least favorite Blade performance.
Yeah.
I don't think he has, beyond like a few looks where he like reacts to like Norman Reedus' presence, like he doesn't really get to do anything new or cool compared to the first one.
I mean, he gets that one moment where he slaps Ron Perlman in the face, and they have their little insulty exchanges.
That was good.
Yeah,
that was good.
That's fun. But other than that, it just kind of feels like more of the same, but not an improvement. I'm sort of jumping around here, but we mentioned that Del Toro directs this one. he of course did not direct the first one. That was Stephen Norrington, and he will not direct the third one. And something you said to me before we did these is that it very much feels like three different visions for Blade, and that makes sense because you got three different creative teams. Well, it's David Goyer wrote them all, but it kind of feels like the times are a changing between each film and like what's hot at the time. And you certainly have three different directors, and I feel like Del Toro's style isn't as much for me in comparison, where that first one is kind of a sort of cult, stylish, cool, ancient meets modern epic type thing. This one is far more kind of it's got a large amount of international flavour to it. We have a lot of very thick European accents, some of which are dubbed over, and we have kind of, I don't think Del Toro does the action scenes as well. There's a lot of weird CG, particularly as Blade is fighting two members of the Blood Pack before he knows who they are. They're having this big fight in front of these UV lights, and it sticks out to such a crazy degree when they swap between these CG models and close-ups of the actors, and it just looks like garbage to me, that scene.
Yeah. Well, what I'll say is, I think the silver lining is that we have three very distinct Blade films, and they are almost all for different audiences.
Yeah.
If you just want a crazy monster movie that is relatively slow and plotting, featuring a lot of stupidity from the characters, then this is the one for you.
Yeah. I mean, it's actually shorter than the first one, but it was more mature to watch, in my opinion. Yeah,
like, only if you're really sucked into Blade. Like, this was probably the most I enjoyed it, but I was just very invested in Blade while I was watching these movies. I was just like, I want to, like, suck in all, pun not intended, all the Blade I can get. And, but that doesn't mean I couldn't, like, see the holes through it. So, I mean, one, right away, a huge red flag is that the movie starts off with him rescuing Whistler, who was presumed to be dead.
Yes.
And, like,
shot himself in the head, went limp.
Well, I mean, like, yes, we didn't see him shoot himself. Yes, he very conceivably could have been bitten and turned into a vampire that time or whatever. Yes. Like, but the logistics of him getting to Eastern Europe?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what? It was just like, obviously resurrection and vampire films are always going to be a thing, but, don't go for that moment in the first. I mean, but as I said, that's what we've been talking about. This does not feel like a cohesive trilogy at all. That's the first sign of it right there, is that if you're going to kill Chris Christopherson, you should not have brought him back. And in fact, I actually disagree with the decision to kill him in the first one. I thought it was way too soon. And they didn't, like, milk that moment for what it could have been fully in a more fully realized universe. But
was a sequel as guaranteed then?
No,
as
it wasn't.
films are now. Yeah.
No, for sure it was not. But in that story, you would want a more climactic death for him, not something 2/3 of the way through the film.
Yeah,
as far as I'm concerned. But yes, it's brought back, and
not as good.
Yeah, he's just a little more jokey.
He smiles a lot. He doesn't have as good of a level of banter with the new cast as he does with Blade.
They create this false sense of tension with Blade too, where it's like why? Like, okay, I get why Blade would want to be cold to him when he first got him, because it's like he doesn't know if he's going to be a vampire or not.
Yeah,
like that makes sense both from a character standpoint, just like a logical standpoint. But like, why are they like at odds?
Yeah, they kind of tease this thing of where Blade is maybe enjoying hanging with the Blood Pack, and he's got Scud, his new tech boy, and he's like arguing with Whistler a lot, and it's like, what are we really doing here? Like, I feel that doesn't feel believable. I feel Blade would have Whistler in on everything at all times, and like you could play the thread of they are feigning some sort of fallout for the audience of the Blood Pack and Scud, but
that's stupid.
And I also feel there are moments where they do this when no one's around, so yeah, he's just overall not as good. And the Karen's legacy from the first one, I assume it's her cure that Blade injects him with.
Yes,
and then they do this weird thing of like, Scud mentions, nobody goes cold turkey from the thirst in one night. It's like, are you saying that the cure hasn't worked and he might still be a bit vampire-y? It just, I don't know, it felt a bit weird. Yeah. You can have those two argue because, one replaced the other, but that felt like an unnecessary extra thing to hint at. And you have Whistler disappearing in the middle of, like, they're all in this club trying to find the Reapers, and Whistler and Scud are outside sort of keeping watch. And at a key moment when Scud's being sort of attacked, Whistler is absent from his sniper post. And they try and almost play it as if maybe Whistler is actually still... it's just bad. I can't be bothered to keep talking about it. It's bad.
that leads us to Norman Reedus, who is way too young and not quite the...
It doesn't look right. It doesn't look right.
No. Not quite the silent, brooding actor he would become later in his career. A little in over his head as a performer in this one, is I kind of thought.
Yeah.
You know, his turn to he was a familiar all along at the end felt very forced and hokey.
And it kind of contradicts some of his actions. Like, he's legitimately developing weapons that kill vampires. Like,
yeah, it raised more questions than it answered, put it that way.
He does an annoying amount of kind of exposition-y dialogue that isn't delivered all that well.
Yeah. Luke Goss gets to play our main quote-unquote villain,
yeah.
But I think a good trademark of Del Toro is that, you know, the villain always has some sort of legitimate motivation to a certain extent, except for the Nazis in the first Hellboy.
Yeah.
Luke Goss, much like in the second Hellboy, he's a great action actor.
Same character.
Yeah, essentially.
Heavy amounts of makeup and prosthetics, kind of badass fighter man, but
it's like,
Nomak is weird. Like, they kind of play a little bit fast and loose with his abilities.
Yeah.
Like, he situationally becomes literally bulletproof at one point, and it's like, oh, okay. I thought they would put him down, but he'd get right back up, but he's like charging through bullets and tearing open metal doors and stuff. It's like, okay, fair enough.
Yeah. It's not great.
No.
And then the main thing, I mean, this is the Blood Pack.
Yeah.
What a bunch of dorks.
Yeah. Some chump called Donnie Yen, who Matt didn't recognize.
Yeah, what a waste of Donnie Yen. Essentially dies off screen.
He got to choreograph the fight.
Yeah. There's the annoying guy from the first Fast and the Furious movie. He's there.
You were going to have to be more specific than that. Which one's
the bearded guy.
Oh, okay.
Ron Perlman, who gets punked the fuck out in his very first scene.
Yeah, many Hitler jokes in his direction. Many anti-German jokes.
Fair play. Scud says that, we let you think you had us all up. Like, wait, so Ron Perlman allowed Blade to completely punk his ass? Like, how did he know how do you know he wouldn't kill him and would just put, like, the bomb on it? Like, what?
Yeah.
Like,
Ron Perlman, also the only character in these movies to exhibit that sunlight burns through clothing, which is immediately dropped.
Yeah.
Continuity is strong.
Danny John Jules actually liked quite a bit.
Yeah,
I thought it was pretty...
the cat from Red Dwarf without the annoying voice. Who would have thought?
Tony Curran from Priest, who had played Priest, would probably most notably go on to play the Invisible Man in The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen with the director of the first Blade movie. Go figure.
I think he's in one of the Underworlds as a vampire as well.
Sure.
Who knows?
These guys are just a bunch of incompetent geeks.
They are just there to kind of establish that the Reapers are bad news, because obviously they can't kill Blade, and normal vampires can kill humans, so they're just... It's a trope that you see all the time. We've assembled this best of the best unit, and then they all just get killed by the Reapers.
Yes.
And it's like, oh shit, the Reapers are badass. And it's like, well...
Yes.
But that whole scene in is it the House of Pain, the club?
Yes.
It's just, I don't care, you know? It's like, okay, they killed that one. Oh, they killed that one. Oh, Donnie Yen bit it. That sucks. Yeah.
It's not good.
It's not good.
It's not a good movie.
No. Blade gets a love interest.
Which they really forced.
Yes, they did. They love each other after a day. There was a sex scene that got cut.
Oh, really? I didn't know that. I mean, I thought it was kind of an interesting beat for the Nisa character to play Lenora Varela, where upon learning that her father created this Reaper virus all along, like, she got something somewhat fatalistic about it and kind of just, like, said, kind of fuck it, and then, like, voluntarily goes out to die in the sunlight.
Yeah, I want to see the sunrise and all that. They began to tug at a maybe interesting thread with her kind of presenting a different side to vampires, and when she kind of gives Blade a bit of a talking to, but they again, either do more with it or don't do it at all.
Yeah, there's just not enough time for humans and their reactions and emotions in the Guillermo del Toro monster movie.
Damaskinos is a bit weird.
Yeah. I mean, there's just not much in this movie. It's all flash and no substance. There's not even like the main martial arts fight for Wesley Snipes is he's fighting someone who's clearly not trying to kill him, so he doesn't try to kill her, so it feels more choreographed.
Yeah,
and less violent.
Awful. And there's a lot of continuity issues, like from, we mentioned like Whistler being dead. Oh wait, he's not dead. EDTA, which is a thing that Karen weaponized for Blade at the end of the first film. It makes the vampires go boom, and it's actually how he kills Deacon Frost. So you'd think Blade would remember it. Scud essentially shows it to him, and he reacts as if this has never been done before. So that's weird that got through. I feel the vampires, the way they die, it looks completely different than the first one, and they may change it again in the third one, but just that's something. But you do have the kind of, in the same way as the first one, it ends with Blade getting revived by a large intake of blood, only to just absolutely murder his way through a room of people. And it also ends with him in a different country altogether, in a sort of non sequitur. So in that way, it kind of, there is some nice continuity, I guess nice. But yeah, there's just so much stuff where it contradicts what's established in the first film, or will contradict what happens in the third, or it's just messy. And I think it's kind of shocking that it's the same writer every time. And Wesley Snipes, obviously, I don't know if he has a producer credit yet. I think he didn't. I think he always had one, because there's some story about him and the guy that played Deacon Frost having an argument and him pulling rank, essentially. But it's surprising that when you have the same writer and the same lead star, that so many issues could crop up with continuity. But maybe they just didn't give a shit and thought no one would remember. So
yeah, that's how it felt for sure. Like, they just didn't care about the continuity. Like, no one would care, so why bother?
I only had one liner in this that I liked, and I think it's in the trailers, but they censor it, and it's, you obviously don't know who you are fucking with, and then he kills them all, and it's good times. But yeah, less fun one-liners.
That one's good. I also like his response. So what's the play here? I think they're gonna fuck us the first chance they get, which I was like, okay, yes, I'm glad that you're not a moron.
Yeah, he's not a complete idiot. It feels very messy, and they spent a lot of time designing characters and thinking. I'm sure someone got paid a lot of money to sit down and, like, one by one come up with concept designs for the Blood Pack and be like, oh, how cool they are, but it's for nothing. Like, you don't get to see them be effective, you just get to see them get their asses kicked, and several of them barely have lines. And you have, all these reveals with Scud and Nomak being Damaskinos' son, and all these things. It feels like they spent a lot of time in pre-production and not a lot of time trying to stitch it together in a way that is good and interesting. And it's so boring, and that to me is a worse sin than being bad, which for me, that's why this is undoubtedly the worst of the three. Which is weird, because once upon a time I would have told you I liked this film.
That's about it for me on this one.
Yeah, same here. That's Blade 2. We'll be back one more time with our third and final episode of Thirst Winners, talking about Blade Trinity. What a fun time for everyone. EnterTheRealWorld.com, Mike and Matt on SoundCloud. We have all the good stuff. Go read it, go listen to it, have fun. And, remember, the thirst always wins. And rustly sounds from Mike, and that's it. I against I, flesh in my flesh, your mind, not my mind. Two of a kind, but one won't survive. My image is reflecting the enemy's eye, and his image is reflecting